So this is how I built my first paludarium. I started by taking this egg crate and cutting out sections to put together with zip ties in order to make a chamber that the pump could go down. Here I was testing, making sure that the pump fit. Then I sprayed Great Stuff foam sealant. You can get it at any Home Depot or Lowe's or Walmart to make the section of the waterfall. I had the idea that I was going to make 3 separate ponds in the waterfall. So here you see when it's done being hardened, usually it takes about 12 to 24 hours. I cleaned it up on the back with a knife, making sure it was all smooth and flat so that the pump could easily slide down. Here you see me digging out with a knife, my fingers, and other tools, digging out the ponds. So at the top you can see I dug out a little hole for the first pond. Then there was a side portion where it would overflow into the second pond. And then I had a hole in the second pond that dripped down into the third pond, sort of like a little cave ponds. And then I just finished up touching it up with my fingers until I was pleased with it. Then I started going over it with silicone, and I just went over the waterfall part, so I wasn't doing the whole thing yet. This was just the waterfall part. I then smashed some lava rock, then slowly placed larger pieces of lava rock in the parts that I siliconed to be the backdrop of the waterfall. After I did the big rocks, I sprinkled a little bit of the crushed lava rock that you saw me crush up earlier, just so that there were no gaps in between. Here I did the same thing in the second pond, just putting some silicone down on the part where the water would be, pressing in some lava rock, and then sprinkling over some crushed lava rock on top of it. So then we go down to the third portion of the waterfall. So that was the second pond right here with the overflow. And then here's the third pond where I just again go over it with silicone, rub it down with my fingers, place lava rock, and then sprinkle the crushed lava rock just to fill in any gaps that there might be. And this is the finished waterfall product, at least, with the 3 separate ponds. I'm pretty pleased with it. Now, I then do a little test run, make sure that everything flows the way I want to, which it doesn't. So I fixed it with silicone and rocks, and I did that multiple times. So it wasn't good on the first, second, or third try. But here you have me siliconing the rest of it and putting dirt on top of it. Now I did this in portions just because it's so large and I was manually siliconing. So I would silicone part, then rub it down with my finger with gloves on, of course, and just press dirt into it. Now you want to make sure that you press the dirt just to make sure that it sticks firmly. I also, as you can see, I had cut out sections for the pots and just placed some pots in. And as you just saw, I did vacuum it. Usually the silicone holds the dirt well enough that you can vacuum up any excess dirt. Then over here, I cut out that bottom portion where the water was going to be, just so that water could flow to the pump easily, ripping out all these chunks of Great Stuff. Then here, because I wanted the water to flow like a river, I had to separate the land portion from the water portion. So I cut plexiglass in order to build, in order to separate the wall portion, or the water portion, from the land portion. I also didn't have a lot of things that I could do this on, so I used a chair, which, the chair got a little damaged, but that's okay. So what I had just done there was punch holes for the PVC pipe to go, because as I said, I wanted it to flow like a river, so I needed the water to go from one side to the pump and then come back on the waterfall. Here, I didn't have any 90-degree angles, so I used a fish tank. Definitely not the best setup, but it worked. So here's the setup. This is me siliconing the part that separates the land from the water. And then over here, I just added the little part that separates the pump from the rest of the land water, or from the rest of the water. Then we go into siliconing the PVC pipe so that it flows from one side to the back. I silicone that rock there just so that there wasn't a dip in and the water wouldn't just rest in the PVC pipe. So here you go, the 3 separate chambers, the one for land, the one for the pump, and the one for the water. Now here, I do this sometimes. You don't really have to. Honestly, I think it's a waste of silicone, but I siliconed the back to where I was going to put more grate stuff. Then this is me grate stuffing over the dried silicone, pressing in pots for plants. As you can see, there's paper towels in the pots. I do this just so that the silicone doesn't grow into the pots as it expands. Then here you have me siliconing the already hardened grate stuff, pressing it, putting soil on it and pressing it down. And then I'm doing the same thing for the back of the water, like the backdrop of the water portion, except I'm using stones and gravel. Then here I tested out to see if the PVC pipe would hold, and it didn't. So I had to go over it with more silicone, and I used a lot. After doing that 2 or 3 times, I finally decided it was time to test out the waterfall, and it works exactly how I wanted it to, kind of. The parts where it's dripping, I didn't really mind because I knew I was going to put moss over it anyway, which would benefit from some water running over it. Then I cut out some filter foam just as a little circle, just to make sure that nothing got into the pump section that I didn't want. Then I filled the bottom of the land section with leca, or clay pebbles, covered it with some mesh, filled the top of the mesh with Reptisoil, and it came out to be about half and half. I probably could have used less leca, but this was my first paludarium. Then here I knew I wanted to make a tree kind of thing, so I took some thin toilet paper, crushed it up into balls, put it in between the sticks, and used super glue to stick it together, and it came out like that. Then on the bottom I used the fluval aqua soil to put as the base layer of the water or fish tank part. Then I took a white sand to cover on top of that, and I just did a thin layer, just enough so that you didn't see the aqua soil. And then after I put a thin layer of that sand, I took some gravel just to sprinkle it in, just to give it a little more texture, which it didn't look great in the beginning, but once everything was planted and there was an aquascape in there, it didn't look as bad. Then once I was done with this, this is how it looked like with the hardscape and aquascape. Then I took the tree out to plant all the plants, and I'm happy to give you guys the list of plants in the description, but I went over this way too fast to tell you each plant that I put in. But a lot of cool colors, a lot of fun plants, and yeah. I siliconed some. As you can see, I siliconed that creeping fig onto the side. Then I put the tree back in and planted some orchid and bromeliads, some moss, and some little ferns in the crevices and cracks, as well as I put some palms on the bottom. Then I slowly filled up the water portion, and I put tinfoil down just so that as I poured the water, it wouldn't mess up the sand. And I added some air plants and some more bromeliads, and this was the final setup. So, yeah.